Nastya Yasnaya. Atlanta. Transformation. Dear reader, you are not holding a simple book in your hands, you are holding a tool that can turn your whole life around. Who are we? And what do we know about ourselves, about our planet, about its inhabitants? Leave everything that is on the surface to your mind, and read this book with your heart. And then the miracle of rebirth will touch you, transforming your life into a new reality full of love and incredible discoveries. With sincerity to you. Настя Ясная. Chapter 1. Loneliness. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the cozy kitchen. Anya quickly ran to the stove and moved the Turk to the next burner. With a deft movement of her hand, she carefully poured the contents into the cup and added a little milk. Her favorite white Pomeranian was fussing around, looking at the hostess. Anya looked at the fluffy miracle, smiled and gently touched the baby's ear. Throwing a robe over her body, still wet from the morning shower, the girl took a cup of drink and went into the room to the window. Anya liked to drink coffee, looking at the morning landscape. By the way, the view from her windows was amazing. From the height of the 14th floor, the sprawling Krolatsky bike track with its ornate paths and the wonderful church of the Most Holy Theotokos were well viewed. A little further away, a picturesque bridge could be seen, gracefully hanging over the Moscow River, with a fancy glass capsule in the middle. Anna inhaled the aroma of the drink and took a sip, enjoying the familiar taste. The sun gently caressed the green carpets of the hills, scattering its solar reflections everywhere, reflecting from the golden poppies of the temple. Suddenly Anya noticed something tall and dark, towering over the neighboring district, across the river. What is it? The girl thought, peering. A huge something, spread out over the entire horizon, was creeping up on the houses, devouring them. Anya closed her sleepy eyes. Maybe I imagined it? She thought. But when she opened them again, she saw the same picture. A cloud, or rather some dark mass, continued to devour the barely awakened houses with its merciless gaping mouth. Anna shook her head and convulsively took a few more sips of coffee. However, the vision still did not disappear, and now the neighboring shore disappeared in the mouth of a paunchy monster, eclipsing the morning sun with its high withers. My God, what is it? The girl screamed, dropping the mug on the wide windowsill and leaning against the window. A huge flock of screaming birds rushed past, crashing into the balcony and windows. Anya recoiled from the glass with lightning speed. Intently, with all her attention, she peered at the growing blackening wall. A tall sea wave was moving directly towards her, crushing everything in its path. A tsunami! The girl cried. But it can't be. There is no sea in Moscow. But reality did not recede, and a huge wave was flying right at her. Run! The thought cut her consciousness. But where? The girl rushed to the bedside table next to the documents, not taking her stunned gaze from the monster. The wave was already engulfing the picturesque bridge, collapsing with all its weight on the flimsy human buildings that were disappearing under its onslaught. To the roof urgently! Anya shouted and, grabbing her Pomeranian under her arm, which was always spinning under her feet, she rushed to the door, as if in slow motion. Krolatsky Station, a man's voice said dryly from the car's speakers. The doors opened, and the people poured out in a grey mass onto the platform, carrying the dozing girl with them. Anna stumbled out of the cramped space and immediately woke up. Ugh, she breathed, it was a dream. The girl casually adjusted her disheveled braid, still being impressed by what she saw, but after leaving the subway, she finally cheered up, greedily inhaling the February air, and showered with wet snowflakes, hurried home. Anna lived alone. More precisely, with his beloved friend the white dwarf Pomeranian Umka. The clang of the door lock and the joyful barking of the dog pierced the evening space of the landing. Jumping out of the apartment, Umka spun like a top at the feet of the hostess, whining and getting up on his hind legs. Anna bent down and took the fluffy ball in her hands. Hello, baby. She gently lisped and touched the dog's wet nose. Umka licked her nose and everything else he could reach, and shifted nervously in his arms. You are my happiness, the girl thought, putting on a walking harness and a blue sheepskin coat. It was still drizzling outside. Anna was walking along the usual walking route in her favorite Kralatsky forest. Wow, the girl mused, what a winter it is in Moscow. Wet snow, and that's a joy. It will slightly cover the gray everyday life, and that's good. Although in the morning it will still melt. Yes, you will not wait for fluffy snowdrifts, as in Siberia, here. Umka, meanwhile, deftly marks strategically important objects, reminding all the local dogs who is in charge here. Anna leaned back against a tall pine tree and closed her eyes. Quietly, almost noiselessly, the snow fell on her slightly tired face, leaving wet spots. A couple of snowflakes gently touched her eyelashes. The girl smiled. She remembered how in her hometown, Krasnoyarsk, as a child, in the winter, with her mother and sister, they went to the Stalby Nature Reserve. They spent the whole day there, climbing up to the ancient stone statues. How joyfully and with perseverance the family reached the elephant, feathers, and other natural wonders, drowning in the mighty space of the taiga. Silver-plated firs, sweeping pines, powerful cedars always greeted them with strong embraces, blowing travelers with fresh air to dizziness. Anya was especially pleased with their fluffy white fur coats. By the way. And didn't I choose Umka for a white fur coat? She thought jokingly and looked at the dog. The Pomeranian obediently sat at her feet, shivering slightly from the cold. Let's go home, baby. The hostess cheerfully called out to him and took him under her arm. An hour later, Anya was already fussing in the kitchen, setting the festive table. The delicious aroma of cooking food wafted out of the oven. The girl put a large pink dish, utensils, and napkins on the table. Almost done. It remains to cut a salad and put the culmination of today's dinner out of the oven, chicken with potatoes in garlic sauce, she concluded. Umka was spinning under his feet, anticipating the stunning treats from the table. Anya turned on some nice music and took out a bottle of red wine from the 2004 harvest, which her friends gave her for her last birthday. And now I'm celebrating my birthday alone, the birthday girl thought. More precisely, its threshold. By the way, it was in 2004 that I came to Moscow, full of hope and confidence in my victory. Deftly uncorking the bottle, she filled the glass with a dark red liquid and slowly inhaled the pleasant aroma. Turning the wine clockwise, the girl took a small sip. It was tart and sweet. It was obvious that his bouquet had not yet opened. The wine leg slowly flowed down the glass, captured by elegant fingers with a delicate pink manicure. 36. Anya stated aloud, frowning. I'm turning 36 years old, and what have I come to? The oven beeped loudly. The girl put the glass on the table and hurried to turn off such a shrill sound. Umka, happily wagging his tail, followed her. He sat down next to her legs and coquettishly raised his front paw. The dog looked at the hostess ingratiatingly with his moist, dark beads of eyes, waiting for a delicious treat. How simple everything is with you, Umka, Anna said, taking his sweets out of the closet. Here, help yourself, she handed him a slice of dried duck breast. Umka enthusiastically danced on his hind legs, snatching the prey, and trotted to his place. Anna decided to wait until the dinner cooled down a little. Sitting down on the kitchen chair with a glass of wine, she was finally able to exhale the tension of the working day. In general, everything was not bad. She liked working in the advertising field, but at the same time she felt like she was out of place. And in general, I felt that I was living some kind of life that was not my own. Is this what I wanted? Thought the Siberian, looking at one point. No, I'm not. Since early childhood, Anya studied violin and piano, sang the leading parts in the choir, where everyone noticed her beautiful voice. The girl knew for sure that she wanted to become a professional singer, and made a lot of effort to do this. At the age of 14, Anya won the district pop song contest, and it started. The girl was supported by the local administration, giving her a free place in the best city vocal studio. Competition after competition brought her more and more new victories, diplomas, cash prizes, which were very useful for their family budget. Yes, her family was not rich, or rather, even poor. Their father left them when Anya was 5 years old. Her mother pulled her and her sister with the last of her strength, trying to put the girls on their feet. My father's relatives did not help or even communicate with them, and my mother's family lived far away, 3,000 kilometers away. My mother taught violin lessons at a music school and worked part-time at a local market as a seller of children's toys. Anya and her sister often helped her mother to trade, and there they learned how to earn their first pocket money. As for her father, he was a very talented and creative person, an artist, a poet, a musician. But his main and distinctive talent was laziness. It led the whole family to starvation and division. He left, unable to bear the family burden, and never returned. At the age of 17, Anya already worked as a singer at banquets, in restaurants and pubs. The end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s were famous for fun times in Russia, and Siberia was no exception. The most fashionable and seedy tavern in the city, where the girl was singing then, was a hangout of local authorities. The bandits staged a showdown right before her eyes, having fun to the point of godlessness. Anya, watching all these nightly oil paintings, was no longer surprised by anything. Of course, all this tavern nonsense prevented the girl from finishing the hairdressing lyceum a little, but she stubbornly continued to attend lectures and practice, falling asleep on the go. In general, Anya wanted to finish all 11 classes, and then go to study as a psychologist and at the same time continue her singing career in parallel, but life, and especially the financial need for a family, ordered otherwise. Anna had to grow up early and quickly, which finally divorced her from her peers, but brought her closer to her colleagues in the shop, who were much older. The lost, complicated youth certainly left its mark on her worldview. A fragile girl with a red braid and big brown eyes stood on the night, smoke-filled stage and sang gloomy tavern songs in a clear voice, trying to survive and reach her dream. Once Anya performed as an opening act in a nightclub, where the casting of girls for a modeling agency took place. The Siberian woman was aware of her comeliness and suitable height and decided to try her hand. Without hesitation and shyness, walking along the catwalk in one swimsuit under the spotlight and inquisitive unfamiliar glances, she joined the main staff of the leading modeling agency of the city. With this event, her life became even more intense and interesting. In addition to the pub, banquets, and city performances, there were auditions, screenings, magazine shoots, beauty contests. All this was followed by new suitors who curled and buzzed around the girl, trying to bite her. But Anna was adamant, because her heart was already given to the only one she met on the eve of her coming of age. It was a married man older than her. He had a pregnant wife, and he drove around the city in a blood-red foreign car. Of course, this was a bad guy who had a special authority among the locals. At first, Anya was afraid of him, but the man skillfully won the girl to himself and quickly penetrated her heart. In a heart waiting for a miracle, waiting for love. Almost immediately, they began to live together. The wife was sent to her parents, and there she gave birth. Anya became more and more confused in these relationships, trying to figure out what is good and what is bad. And while she was floundering in this mess, he bit into the girl more and more like a tick, and was jealous of her for every post, with all the consequences that followed. And she, hiding the bruises, sat alone in a locked apartment, not understanding what her fault was. After 3 years of living together, when Anya tried to escape from this captivity, he ambiguously hinted that he claimed her apartment and car, earned with hard work. And only after the girl gave everything to his side, he let her go. Although then he harassed and threatened. So, in her 20s, Anya found herself free and on the threshold of a new life. And this new life did not take long to wait. On the eve of her 21st birthday, the girl flew to a fashion show in Moscow. A well-known Russian oligarch has been watching her for a long time. They often met at model parties and communicated amicably. In addition to the fact that Anya was a popular model, everyone knew about her wonderful musical talent and on occasion asked her to sing. So this time the Moscow evening was filled with the charming sounds of her voice, and she was made an interesting offer to stay in the capital and start her singing career for real. The rented apartment turned out to be a small apartment with cobwebs on the windows siphoning from the wind, with a loose parquet floor and a cracked sink. In addition, they were on the edge of the city, which allowed them to destroy all the girls' illusions about Moscow overnight. This confused Anya a little, who was expecting, to put it mildly, a slightly different reception, but, not paying much attention to all this, she diligently set to work. She spent her working days in the studio with vocal classes, stage skills, dancing under the dome of a major Russian music label, where she was transferred. But for some reason, the case did not move. So a year passed, followed by the second. But none of the recorded songs were released. The girl's urgent requests to see the instigator of this whole story were rejected by his henchmen. Anya did not understand what was the matter. 6 months later, the girl was politely sent home without explanation. Anya had nowhere to go back to that moment, and then she decided that she would only go forward and come what may. Without a higher education, the Siberian was able to get a job only as a courier, all in the same label, where yesterday she was a nascent star. Moreover, the 10-year contract was still in force, which tied the girl's hands. She could not engage in her singing and modeling activities with someone else or on her own, since she was their property. It took a lot of effort to break these bonds years later. All this time, Anya was trying to understand what happened then and why did those people who so kindly invited her here refuse her. But no matter how much she dug into her guesses and assumptions, she did not manage to find the truth, and gradually she forgot about it. Anya continued to spin and survive in Moscow as best she could. However, she noticed that in a difficult moment, help always came to her suddenly, as if someone invisible and omnipotent was watching her and carefully led her through the thorny thorns that she felt she had to go through. The vicissitudes of life forced the girl to put on mask after mask and build high walls between herself and the world around her, locking her true self in a bulletproof vest of strained smiles, goodwill and pleasant phrases. Nevertheless, her life gradually became clearer. She went to study in absentia at the Institute of Arts and received a higher cultural education. At the same time, she began working in the field of show business as a manager, and then on television. Already being free from an unsuccessful contract, she tried to build her own singing career, but she failed to achieve much success. In general, she was twisted, turned around in the capital's whirlpool, like a chip, for 15 years and eventually threw up on the shore, where she was still able to more or less stand on her feet, but her soul no longer sang, and her heart was covered with a thick, iron shell, through which neither love nor pain could break through. Of course, during all this time, many men were ready to lend her their shoulder and even offered their hand, but the past experience of love left her with too painful memories and distrust of the strong half of humanity. In addition, all these men seemed to her to be some kind of strangers, and in the end, not letting anyone get too close to her, she continued her journey alone. However, in the depths of her soul, Anya still cherished the hope of meeting with the very native and beloved person whom she would immediately recognize and feel. As time went on, she became more and more closed in herself and gave her preserved love to the faithful dog, who was now quietly curled up at her feet and sweetly dozing. Every year she became even more beautiful, but also even more lonely among tens of millions of dry metropolitan faces. I wonder if the solarium will help me, Anya thought, sipping a little wine. A year ago, The girl, in search of answers to her questions, became interested in scientific astrology and entered professional courses of astrologers. The sky, the stars, the planets had attracted her attention since childhood, and now they gave her strength. Having learned that there is an effective method in astrology that corrects fate, Anna immediately turned to her senior fellow students with this question. The essence of the solarium was that with the help of an astrological program, a place is being searched for on the planet where it is best for a person to celebrate his birthday. Arriving there almost on the eve of a personal new year, a person activates powerful cosmic currents and directs them to exciting areas of his life, thereby correcting it. Anna resorted to this method, grasping at it as if it were a straw. Solaris pointed to the solar cube. The young astrologer has never been there, which caused her a double interest and a desire to visit this piece of the planet. In addition, Cuba was located on the shore of her beloved Atlantic Ocean, which Anya once visited and had an amazing contact with it for herself.